What's up, everyone? Welcome to Tosche Station Emporium. Here is a rambling video about 3D printing in general, from the hobbyist to a business. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is why? Why do you want to get into 3D printing in general? And never be discouraged in your answers and your journey towards going into this great hobby. I'm an advocate of it, so I'm going to encourage as much as I can with and being honest about some of the speed bumps along the way, some of the learning curves that you're going to have, what you're going to expect and get into, and then once you do, it's very rewarding. So my first question to anybody would be like, what? Put it on a piece of paper. What, in a short term, lengthwise, time wise, what do you want to do with this 3D printer that you're going to get? Okay, so the answers are everything from little Christmas ornaments to trinkets around the house, to full blown cosplay armor. Okay, and everything in between, and it could even be from creating items, 3D printed items, and making a business out of it too. There are avenues to go towards these answers, and it'll help you determine what printer to get and how much you want to put into it right away, and hopefully that you can stick with it and keep with it. So be true to yourself, and like I said, when I say short term, it's because don't put anything, don't back yourself against a wall on anything, right? So you can start this journey with one idea in mind, and I'll tell you a cool story here. Well, my story, but one idea in mind, and then it progresses into something completely different when you got into the hobby. Myself, when I bought my first printer, this was 10 years ago, and this is when printers weren't very affordable and available, so I had to do a lot of research, so I lived off of YouTube. So I'm trying to give you the questions that I have now that I would have told myself 10 years ago to kind of like ask. But I did it for exactly what I wanted to do in the first place. I wanted to create little terrain for tabletop gaming, D&D or a Warhammer, stuff like that. I wanted to create the terrain, or print it and have my own stuff. And eventually I wanted to do little models and everything. But I quickly discovered the entire world of the possibilities that what a 3D printer can bring you. And it's all about living online and finding these communities and finding people who make these amazing models that you can download and print. So my obsession and start point of 3D printing started with just taking things off the internet and printing them, and then painting them, finishing them, sanding them, stuff like that. And then it very rapidly evolved into other things. As you see behind me, and that's what this channel is mainly about, is the two worlds, action figures and 3D printing, right? So very quickly, my hobby became a business, where I found a need that I wanted to do in my hobby, and I used my 3D printing to create that and create a business around it. So my buying guides of 3D printers changed overnight, and so I had to kind of like do my own research to have a print farm. So again, it's a very different thing for a hobbyist to a business, and I want to try to cover that as best I can. And in no means take my only word for it. I'm just trying to give you that idea and that encouragement to take those steps for an awesome hobby. But definitely do research out there, especially when it comes to buying and forking out $500, $600, $700 for a printer. So again, good practice. Put it on paper what your goal is, and make a short-term goal, because something that you want to be able to buy the printer, take it home, plug it in, and start printing and start getting into it. And you'll quickly, again, your world will quickly open up on the possibilities, and especially when you get something physically in your hand, you're like, wow, I this went from pixels on a screen to something I hold in my hand. It's great. So again, I'm going to try my best to encourage anybody who wants to get in the hobby, even if you just want to talk about it and discover and gather the information. So that's what we're trying to do here. So, what types of printers are out there? What should you be looking at? For the most part, from the hobbyists to most professionals and businesses and everything, they use FDM printers, which stands for Fused Deposition Modeling. The one behind me right there, you can see that. That is an FDM printer. And basically, what it does is just takes material, plastic filament that goes into a nozzle to a melting point, and it reshapes that plastic into a 3D model that you either downloaded or created. So we are going to be talking about the FDM printers. We're going to be talking about that mostly. There are others. There's resin printers, which is very popular in the hobbyist world too. They're very good for miniatures and detail, real fine detail if you want that, with very minimal post work like sanding, and whatnot. So with that in mind, with the FDM printers, okay, so now we're going to be start looking for one of those, or even if you have one, what's the capabilities of what can you do? I can tell you from my experience is that your only limitations is like it's going to be up to you on these printers. You can push these printers to make things that you wouldn't think you can make, and I'm talking like full on 9-foot models to D&D miniatures. You can do it. It might not be the ideal store bought kind of stuff when it comes to like real small models and stuff, but if it serves your purpose and it serves your hobby, then more power to you. There's nobody should be discouraging you to go into like more expensive printers and stuff when you can get the results out of these printers, and it just takes some time. So another big factor in deciding what you want to print. Again, remember back in when I asked you that question, what is the purpose that you want to do? It is going to determine the types of materials moving forward. I'm going to say 90% of everybody's ideas of what they wanted 3D printing for, they're going to use what's called PLA plastic. And that's the material that you're going to feed through the machine. Now, that it's great because it's low cost, it's biodegradable, and it's made from cornstarch or sugarcane, which means it's non-toxic. So when you heat it up, you can put it right next to your bedroom if you wanted to, and breathe in the the fumes. I wouldn't recommend breathing in anything fume wise, but it's not toxic to you. There are materials when you get into 3D printing. There were additives, so anything that says PLA plus, okay, be mindful that plus means that there's an additive to that PLA. But PLA is great for that low melting point and printing in general. Then you can go all the way to what's called ABS plastic. And I'm not going to get into the big words and everything right now because it's just, it's kind of boring. Big words are boring sometimes. But ABS plastic is your industrial strength plastic. So Legos, most household items around your house that you see that's plastic, that's made of the ABS plastic. And you can definitely print on those. Now, what's the benefit? Why would you choose ABS plastic over PLA plastic? Well, it depends again on the purpose of what you want to do. Let's put it this way. PLA plastic, you can do anything you want, but there are some limitations on what you do with those models. Meaning, is it going to be outdoors, indoors? Is it going to be moving a lot? Are there going to be moving parts? Or is it going to be stationary, put on a shelf, what have you? So there are a different answers to what you want. Now, all these printers are capable of printing, I would say, most filaments out there. ABS, PLA plastic, you just might have to do little things. And we'll get into that too, as far as like how to pick a printer specifically for a hobby that you're doing, or using the printer that you have and making it work for the material that you want it to work with. So cosplaying, because it needs to be durable and it needs to survive weathering or temperatures, high temperatures, I would recommend anything that has as movement or contact with or is going to be exposed to some extreme elements. I would use ABS plastic. Everyday Everything else I would just do PLA plastic. Now, um, you can, again, going into the future videos, we'll talk about how to make PLA plastic durable, after a post production of your prints. Okay, there's all kinds of things that you can do. You can do um, fiberglass in it. Fiberglass it. You could, make it all as durable as you want. So there again, the limitations are just as I would say the limitations are only limited to the amount of work that you want to put into it after it's off your printer, if that makes sense. And when it will make sense once you start getting into the 3D printing hobby and you start discovering these things, okay? And when you start experimenting with different materials, different filaments, you're going to know what to do, and you're going to know, like, you know what? Maybe I just want a dedicated, if I'm going to get into like cosplay, maybe I want a dedicated 3D printer for that, because there are some different things that you might have to do, because when we really get into the learning curve of 3D printing, it's going to help you determine how to print things and how to prevent warping, and the list of problems. Again, I don't want to discourage anybody, but a list of problems, and we'll say it as a learning curve, happens. It happens. So you're going to learn a lot in this hobby. All right. Speaking of learning curve in this hobby, two things. You're going to have to familiarize yourself with the printer itself. Okay. You're going to learn how to add the filament with take it out. Okay. Nozzle clogs, first layer adhesion, leveling, everything mechanical. You're going to learn about this printer. But again, don't let that scare you. Don't let that be something where it's like it's too overwhelming for me. And a lot of people that I know have bought 3D printers, and it just sits in their closet because they just don't want to mess with it. But once you understand how easy it is to fix these things, or to learn about it to prevent some damage or whatever, it's like well, what was I afraid of the whole time? And that's why picking a certain printer, like when we get into like the buyer's guide section of video that we do, it's going to determine the availability of parts. Okay. If anything goes wrong, because I will be honest with you, most parts on the printer are considered consumables. Eventually, like the print head, gears, there's springs, there's all kinds of stuff that can wear and tear, and then you just replace them. And the ease of replacing them is, again, you got YouTube, and I'm trying to come up with videos to help people out on that too. But it's so easy. It's so easy. And like I said, if I can do it, and I learned where it was very limited in resources, and I learned the hard way in a lot of things. And then I was like, well, now I know, and it was so easy to kind of get into it. It becomes like, well, if something goes wrong, I'll just replace the part. And because they're consumables and these companies know it, they produce it in a very low cost manner, right? A lot of printers today have that in mind. So it's like you could just take it out, throw it away, plug it right back in it's not unscrewing a single bolt or anything like that. So they're getting very savvy on the maintenance on these things. And I will tell you too, you can print hundreds and hundreds of prints, hours and months, even years before something goes wrong. Okay. Or you can have something like a clog happen within the first week, and clogs are common, but you just roll with it. So again, the learning curve on the mechanical things is just don't be intimidated by it. Now, when it comes to the software and the models itself, I would recommend first pulling models off the internet and then printing them. Okay, so then you start to learn and just do default settings on your slicing software. Now, your slicing software is what you're going to have to really pay attention to and learn the parameters. You're going to have to learn settings, okay? Because a lot of times, I think most everything that I design and I print, I tweak settings till I get the perfect print, and then when I get that perfect print, I cookie cutter that 1,000 a time, tens of thousands of times, because that's the nature of where my 3D printing went to. I went to a business, and so I have to make sure that that first print is the same as the millionth print, and it's all in the settings and trial and error and failure and throwing away, R&D, right? So get familiar with the slicing software, and I promise I'm going to do videos on slicing softwares and going through layer heights, overlapping, outer wall, inner wall, thin walls, infill, all that stuff. We're going to go through all that stuff. So, and of course, any slicing software that your printer comes with, there's a lot of help anyway on YouTube. You just Google it, whatever problem you're having, and for the most part, you can nail down that problem and get it resolved fast. So, but I do recommend learning the software, getting familiar with it, what these buttons do, what these parameters do, what these numbers, everything that does, and never be afraid to ask for help too. Never. So type it in, whatever it means, and then learn it. Learn the language, man. So again, there is a bit of a learning curve in that. There's a language to be taught, or there's a language to be learned on it also. But it's the difference of a good day of printing and a bad day of printing. And it could be as simple as a 0.05 difference between whatever parameters that you're trying to do. But learning to identify that is key. I would never try to just pull a file off the internet and then print it in a default settings and think that's the right set, things. I think you'll have more failures than you'll have successes in prints, and then you're going to get discouraged, and you're going to have your printer in the closet, or you'll sell it, right? So again, I can't stress that enough to really get familiar with the slicing software that it comes with. If it's Cura, which is a slicing software, and you'll get familiar with that too, learn it inside and out. I think usually that's the slicing software that a lot of these come with. Again, I could be wrong. There's also paid slicing softwares out there. Like I use Simplify 3D for the most part, which is a paid slicing software, but it gives you so many more tools that I needed when I got really in depth into printing. But I don't think it doesn't have anything else does too. Like the industry's really getting good at taking away the guesswork for you, but it's still good to learn that. So another thing too is we'll explore later on in other videos is going to be, again, pulling existing models off the internet, printing them, and creating your own. Like let's do both, right? Let's see what is out there, because amazing creators out there, and they have a model for everything. And I'll for example, I have this right here. So I have my headphones right here, and I have an IKEA table. So I needed something where I wanted to put the headphones on, and this is a simple thing. I went on to Thingiverse, and I typed in IKEA table headphone holder, and this came up, and I printed it, and it fits right there, and I use it all the time. It's great. So what's out there? There's so many cool things that are already out there. Again, if you just wanted a 3D printer to pull things off and household quality of life stuff, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. It's really cool to be like, yeah, I bought a $500 printer and $20 filament, and I got this, which they go for like 25 cents online. So it's kind of like just a cool thing, where you can start looking around your house, going, you know what, I need something that's going to help my pantry out or my refrigerator, and you can go ahead and print it up and be good. Even if it's a handle for something, it's great. My one tip on pulling models off the internet is to make sure, and a lot of them have a picture of the model itself, okay, and then they'll have other pictures. Make sure there's one that's a printed picture, somebody that took that model and printed it, somebody who designed it and said, look, I modeled this and I printed it, so that when you pull it off, it's printable. a lot of times there's just models on there, and then when you take them and you try to print it yourself, they fail all most of the times because they're not tested, they're not tried and true, right? So with be cautious about that, and it just helps you, uh, less headaches. And then of course the other side of it is to model your own, right? And then we'll get into like Fusion 360. There's Tinkercad. There's all these modeling softwares that have a wide learning curve. But again, the resources out there on YouTube and stuff is incredible. But it's gonna take some time to learn that stuff, um, to design this yourself and then print it, and probably just as much time as it is to download it and print it, right? So we'll explore that too. But maybe we'll do some live streams on that and everything. But so I think I covered a beginner's guide or a beginner's interest into the world of 3D printing, where where you can ask the question of what I want it for. Okay, so and if you see other people with it and you see other prints that are online, or even if you go to Tosche Station, you see the stuff that I have created and I've printed, and you go, you know what, that is something that I want to get into, with the action figures, like making things for that. I hope that this could encourage people to get into the hobby and really get good at it. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to go to school for it. You can learn it yourself. It's just a little bit of dedication again, and just I'm hoping that I gave you those points of those beats to hit on to study what you need to study on. And it's not so overwhelming that you're gonna throw your hands up in the air, because it's definitely a journey. Okay, it's definitely a walking journey that you're gonna get the machine. You're gonna get it set up, and it's gonna come with a little sample model. You're gonna print it, and you're gonna be like, "Look, I've created a box or a cat or whatever, and it's already set for that printer." Now you know the printer works. I mean that, and you did nothing. The next step is, I want to print something else, right? What do I do? First thing you do is go online, you download a model, and print it, and it fails. And they're like, "Well, why? Why?" It's because now you've got to get into some sort of knowledge on the slicing software and know how you're printing it. That's very important. Or the settings could transfer over and you have a great print. But never assume that one print is the same as another one. One model is the same, where these settings work for this one, how come it didn't work for that one? It doesn't always work that way. There's always something. There's always different parameters that you got to look at, and being able to identify with that. So we will definitely do another video on taking a model and printing it from the internet to creating it, and how to orientate it to how to print it the correct way, or a way that's going to actually succeed rather than fail, and why you're getting fails. And then, of course, we're going to get into all kinds of tips and tricks and maintenance on the printers, and try to encourage everybody into the hobby. So, yeah, I hope that this video does its job, and at least perking an interest into it, and maybe a little insight on how 3D printing could be a household item. Like every household should have one eventually. I think that would be the future, where you can, like, I need a spoon, and how many spoons? We have dinners, we have guests coming over this afternoon. Okay, we need 5 more spoons. Let's print them, and wouldn't that be awesome? It's all possible. And why not get on the ground floor, which I still think, as far as like getting into every household, it's still the ground floor. So why not getting into it now, and grow with the industry itself, rather than when it really hits and everybody in it, it's on every new home that you buy, it's going to be intimidating. So little, that's my school of thought there. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining and listening to me ramble on about 3D printing and just a beginner's guide into the hobby itself. So like and subscribe if you haven't. I greatly appreciate it. I greatly appreciate you taking the time and coming here, and let's talk a little shop. I definitely want to do more. I want to do more live streams, and I want to get a, a real time one to one questions and answers the best I can. Again, I am no way the end all be all. Say when it comes to anything 3D printing. I just want to share the experience that I have over 10 years of it. And I've broken machines. I have many failed prints, but I have a ton of success prints. And I have a successful print farm business that I've started from the ground up. I saw a need and I went towards it head on, and I'm building this business and it keeps growing, growing, growing. So it's very encouraging to know that it went from a little 6 by 6 by 6, meaning the volume size, 6 inches printer that I printed full on like Star Wars helmets and half of an R2D2 out of this thing, plus millions of different models, to a print farm of close to what 14, 15 printers now, and a successful internet business that I'm doing. So again, thank you very much for taking the time, and yeah, subscribe, like, and we'll continue.